An 84-year-old woman vanishes in the dead of night, taken from her bed in her pajamas without her shoes, her glasses, or her life-saving medicine. For 55 days, the search for Nancy Guthrie has gripped the nation, but tonight, the silence is being broken by her daughter, Savannah Guthrie. New revelations from the family are completely reframing the investigation, from propped open doors to a mysterious shoe print left in blood. We're diving deep into the evidence the public hasn't seen until now. This is a high-stakes breakdown of the case that's haunting America. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a breaking update on the Michell Report. We are now 55 days into a mystery that feels like a literal nightmare for any American family. Nancy Guthrie, an 84-year-old woman who struggled to even walk to her mailbox on a good day, was snatched from the one place she should have been safest, her own home. But as the weeks turn into months, the narrative is shifting. Savannah Guthrie recently sat down for an agonizingly raw interview, and if you listen closely to her words, she isn't just sharing her grief. She's dropping crucial investigative details that change how we look at that night. One of the most chilling details involves the physical state Nancy was in when she was taken. We're talking about a woman who was in tremendous physical pain. Her back was failing her. According to Savannah, most days she couldn't even make the short trek down the driveway. So the idea of her wandering off, a theory often floated in cases involving the elderly, was dismissed by the family almost immediately. This wasn't a medical episode where a confused woman walked out into the night. This was an extraction, but it's the condition of the house that tells the real story. When Nancy's sister Annie arrived at the home, she found a scene that screamed foul play. The Ring camera had been violently yanked off the wall. There was blood on the front doorstep. And perhaps most puzzling of all, the back door was propped open. Not just unlocked, propped open. Think about the mechanics of that for a second. If you're a kidnapper, you want to be invisible. You want to leave no trace. Propping a door open is a loud, lingering signal of presence. Investigators and security experts are now looking at that door as a key piece of forensic evidence. Why keep it open? Was it to allow for a quick exit while carrying a person? Or more ominously, does it prove there were multiple people involved? If one person is inside and another is acting as a lookout or a driver, that propped door becomes a tactical necessity. It suggests a level of coordination that moves this away from a random crime of opportunity and into the territory of a planned hit. The complexity of this case grows when we look at the geography of the crime scene. We have blood on the front porch, which indicates Nancy or someone went out the front. Yet the back door was the primary point of entry and remained propped open. This creates a confusing in the back, out the front flow that suggests the perpetrators were in the house for a significant amount of time. Sources close to the investigation suggest a 40-minute window where these individuals were on the property. In the world of kidnapping, 40 minutes is an eternity. This brings us to the two-perpetrator theory. If you're alone, you struggle to manage an 84-year-old woman, navigate a house in the dark, and handle multiple exit points. But with two people, one can secure the entry, the back door, while the other moves the victim toward a waiting vehicle at the front. Security experts, including former military and extraction specialists, are leaning heavily into this. They argue that propping the door suggests someone was expected to follow close behind, or that the exit route changed mid-crime. But why are we just hearing about the propped-over door now? In high-profile cases like this, the FBI and local law enforcement often hold back specific details to weed out false confessions or to keep the suspects guessing. However, Savannah Guthrie is in a unique position. She's a victim, yes, but she's also a seasoned journalist who understands the power of the public eye. By revealing these details, she's essentially forcing the investigation to stay in the spotlight. There's a tension there, though. Does the FBI want this information out? Likely not. They prefer a controlled environment. But as former FBI investigators have noted, you cannot control a victim's family, especially one with a platform like Savannah's. She isn't just a daughter. She's Nancy's greatest advocate. If the authorities aren't moving fast enough, she's going to use every piece of information she has to shake the trees and see what falls out. Every detail, the missing shoes, the pajamas, the blood, is a breadcrumb she's throwing to the public, hoping someone somewhere recognizes the pattern. Let's look at the physical evidence gap, because this is where the story gets truly heartbreaking. Savannah confirmed that her mother was taken in her pajamas with no shoes, and most importantly, without her medicine. For an 84-year-old woman, no medicine isn't just a detail. It's a ticking clock. But there's more. Nancy used hearing aids. A pair was found left behind in the house. She also wore glasses. If she was taken without her hearing aids and without her glasses, she was effectively blind and deaf in the middle of the night. Imagine the terror. You are snatched from your bed by strangers. You cannot see them clearly. You cannot hear what they are saying, and you cannot walk properly because of your back pain. You are entirely at their mercy. This brings up a massive question for the technical side of the investigation. How do they know she was barefoot and in PJs? If the Ring camera was ripped off, where is the visual confirmation? There are two possibilities here, and both are significant. The first is that there is hidden video. We know the FBI has been pressuring tech giants like Google and Apple to dig through sets of data for any snippets of doorbell footage or peripheral cameras in the neighborhood. It's possible they have a glimpse, a few frames of Nancy being moved that they haven't released because it's too traumatic or too vital to the case. The second possibility is simpler but equally telling, the slipper evidence. Many elderly people have very strict routines. Nancy's shoes were likely placed right by her bed, exactly where she left them. If the family walks in and sees her slippers sitting right there and her favorite pajamas are missing from the drawer or the hamper, they can deduce with 99% certainty what she was wearing. It's the kind of detail only a close family member would know. It's not just an assumption, it's a forensic conclusion based on the normalcy of her life being violently interrupted. As we move forward, the focus is shifting toward the blood found on that front porch. There is a specific stain that many believe shows a pattern impression. To the untrained eye, it's just a smudge. To a blood-stained pattern analyst, it looks like a shoe print. And not just any shoe, possibly a trail shoe or a hiking boot. If that print belongs to a perpetrator and not Nancy, it is the smoking gun the FBI needs to link a suspect to the house. The forensic floor plan of the Guthrie home tells a story of tactical movements and potential chaos. When you look at the layout provided by investigators, the front door and the back door are the two primary anchors of this mystery. We know the entry was made through the back, that propped open door we discussed, but the exit, that was through the front. To anyone who has ever moved a person with limited mobility, this choice is significant. Carrying an 84-year-old woman in her pajamas through a house in the middle of the night requires a clear path. The front door likely offered the most direct route to a waiting vehicle. This brings us back to Porch Guy. If you've been following the grainy doorbell footage released early on, you've seen the figure approaching the front. But look closer at his movements. He doesn't just walk up to the door, he lingers. He looks to the left, peering through the glass. Why? If he's a lone kidnapper, he's already inside or he's breaking in. But if he's part of a team, he's checking on his partner. He's looking for the all-clear signal from the inside. He's waiting for that front door to open from the interior so they can move Nancy out quickly. Think about the coordination required for that. One person enters the back, navigates the home, secures the victim, and then signals the person at the front to be ready. It's a pincer movement. This isn't a crackhead looking for jewelry. This is an extraction team. And the fact that they left the back door propped open suggests they were in a massive hurry once they reached the front. They didn't go back to close-up shop. They got her in the car and they vanished. But here is where the theory hits a snag. In her recent interview, Savannah Guthrie used a very specific singular noun, a kidnapper. She spoke directly to the person who took her mother. Is this a strategic move by the family to appeal to one individual's conscience, or does the FBI have evidence that, despite the multiple entry points, only one person was actually seen with Nancy? We have to wonder if the two-person theory is an investigative lead that hasn't been fully confirmed to the family, or if Savannah is simply focusing her emotional plea on the leader of this operation. Either way, the physical evidence of the doors and the Ring camera suggests more than one pair of hands was involved in this 40-minute window of terror. While the physical evidence is being picked apart, a much uglier side of this case has emerged: the online investigators and haters who have turned their sights on the Guthrie family. It's a phenomenon we see in almost every high-profile American disappearance, and it's frankly exhausting. One of the biggest points of contention for these armchair detectives is the timeline of the initial 911 call. People are actually attacking Annie Guthrie, Nancy's sister, because she called 911 before she called Savannah. Let's inject some reality into that. If you walk into your elderly mother's home and she's missing, and there's blood on the porch and the security system is gutted, your brain goes into survival mode. For a family that has dealt with an aging parent in declining health, the first thought is often a medical emergency. Did she fall? Did she have a stroke? Did the paramedics already come and take her? You call 911 to find out if there's a record of an ambulance being dispatched. You don't call your sister in New York to have a chat while your mother might be bleeding out in an ER somewhere. You act. The hate directed at the family doesn't stop there. Now the internet has turned its focus toward Nancy's son, Cameron. Why? Because early on, he was the first to suggest this was a kidnapping for ransom. Critics are claiming he knew too much or that he was in on it. But look at the logic. Cameron lives in another state. He has an airtight alibi. And more importantly, he knows the reality of his family's life. When your sister is one of the most recognizable faces on American television, you live with a baseline level of paranoia. You know that wealth and fame make your family a target. For him to jump to kidnapping for ransom isn't a confession, it's a realization of his worst nightmare. Statistically, if a burglar breaks in and sees an occupant, they run. If it's a random murder, the body is usually left at the scene. When a person is removed from the home, especially someone as frail as Nancy, there are only two real motives, a personal vendetta or money. Given the Guthrie family's public profile, money is the most logical, albeit terrifying conclusion. The FBI has cleared this family. They've passed polygraphs. They've opened their lives to investigators. At some point, we have to stop blaming the victims and start looking at the predators who actually committed the crime. This brings us to a moment of raw human vulnerability that I think every American needs to hear. In her interview, Savannah Guthrie didn't just talk about the facts. She talked about the guilt. She looked into the camera and apologized to her mother. She said, "I'm so sorry, Mommy, that I brought this to her bedside. This is the survivor's guilt of the public figure. She carries the weight of believing that her success, her career, and her face on the Today Show are the very things that put a target on her 84-year-old mother's back." Can you imagine living with that? Knowing that while you were sitting in a studio in Manhattan, someone was using your fame to track down your mother in Arizona. It's a burden no daughter should have to carry. Dr. Geraldine Utter, a clinical psychologist who specializes in these types of high trauma cases, points out that this isn't just grief. It's a specific kind of psychological torture. Savannah feels responsible for a crime she didn't commit, simply because she exists in the public eye. But Savannah's response to this guilt is what's truly remarkable. She called her joy her protest. She's refusing to let the kidnappers take her spirit or her children's mother from them. This is a powerful shift in the narrative. By speaking out, by showing her pain, and by standing firm in her faith, she's taking the power back from the anonymous jackals who took Nancy. She's making it impossible for them to hide in the shadows. When a victim's family refuses to be silent, the pressure on the perpetrators becomes unbearable. Someone somewhere knows who did this. And Savannah is making sure that whoever that person is, they can't look at a TV screen without seeing the wreckage they've caused. This isn't just about a celebrity case anymore. This is about the safety of our elderly parents. It's about the reality that in America, you can do everything right. You can provide your mother with a home, a security system, and a loving family, and someone can still come along and rip it all away. The emotional anchor of this case isn't just the famous daughter. It's the 84-year-old woman who just wanted to sleep in her own bed, and the daughter who would give everything she has just to hold her hand one more time. As the investigation enters this new aggressive phase, the search grid is expanding. We are seeing billboards go up across the southwestern United States from San Diego to Houston. And notably, many of them are in Spanish. This has sparked a wave of speculation. Does the FBI have a specific lead pointing toward a Latino perpetrator? Or are they simply being thorough in a region with a massive bilingual population? The truth is likely a mix of both. In the Southwest, any major criminal investigation must be bilingual if it hopes to be effective. But there's also the reality of the border. If Nancy was taken and moved, the Southwest corridor is the most likely route. By putting these billboards in Phoenix, Tucson, Dallas, and beyond, the FBI is casting a net that covers thousands of miles of potential travel. They aren't just looking for Nancy, they're looking for the vehicle, the porch guy, and anyone who might have seen something strange at a gas station or a rest stop 50 days ago. Security experts like Brian Fitzgibbons note that this expansion of the search radius usually happens when local leads go cold. It means the FBI is now operating under the assumption that the perpetrators have moved Nancy out of the immediate area. It's a walk-down strategy, slowly but surely elimination possibilities until the suspects have nowhere left to run. There are over 10,000 hours of video and 30,000 tips currently being processed. That is a mountain of data, but it only takes one person recognizing a face on a billboard, or one person remembering a neighbor who suddenly had a new guest in their home. But the clock is ticking, And with every day that passes, the legal stakes get higher. In Arizona, if a person dies during the commission of a kidnapping, that is felony murder. It doesn't matter if you didn't intend to kill them. It doesn't matter if they had a heart condition and died from the stress. If you took them and they died, you are eligible for the death penalty. That is the message the authorities are trying to send to any accomplices. Talk now or face the needle. Whether it's the backdoor guy or someone who provided the car, their window to save themselves is closing. One of the most haunting elements of this 55-day mystery is the paper trail left behind by the captors. While investigators originally faced a wall of silence, we now know that multiple ransom notes were sent to media outlets and the family, creating a web of confusion and desperation. Savannah Guthrie herself recently revealed that while many copycat messages were dismissed as cruel hoaxes, she firmly believes 2 of those notes were the real deal. These aren't just generic demands for money. Sources indicate these letters contained chillingly specific details that only someone inside that house could have known. Details about the layout of Nancy's Tucson home, an item that was damaged during the struggle, and even the exact clothing she was wearing when she was taken from her bed. One note reportedly even mentioned a specific floodlight on the property and an Apple Watch. The early demands were massive, asking for as much as $6 million in Bitcoin. Savannah and her siblings didn't hesitate. They went on camera and publicly stated, "We will pay." They were ready to trade everything for their mother's safety. But here is where the story takes a dark, unexplained turn. Despite the family's willingness, the money was never sent. Whether this was on the advice of the FBI, who were monitoring the Bitcoin addresses, or because the kidnappers suddenly went silent, we don't know. But what we do know is that the first note gave a deadline of February 9th. That date came and went. The silence that followed is perhaps the most terrifying part of this entire ordeal. It suggests a kidnapping that may have spiraled out of control. When a ransom deadline passes without a transaction or a proof of life, investigators have to consider the worst, that the captors realized the heat was too high, or that Nancy, who requires critical daily medication for her heart and a pacemaker, could no longer be used as leverage. As the search enters its 8th week, the forensic focus has narrowed down to a few square inches of the Guthrie property. We've talked about the blood on the porch, but the DNA results confirm something even more specific, that blood belongs to Nancy Guthrie. This isn't just a sign of a struggle, it's physical proof of injury. However, there's a new piece of the puzzle that experts are obsessing over. Digital forensics teams have been dissecting the frames of the porch camera footage recovered from Google's archives. They've discovered what appear to be lights in the distance during the exact window of the kidnapping. Were these headlights from a getaway car? Or perhaps a second team of lookouts signaling from the desert scrubland that surrounds the Catalina foothills? And then there's the small bouquet of weeds. In a detail that sounds like something out of a twisted psychological thriller, the masked individual seen on the doorbell camera was carrying what some observers described as a small bunch of vegetation from Nancy's own garden. He used it to try and block the camera lens before disconnecting the unit. It's a bizarre, almost personal touch that suggests the perpetrator wasn't just a brute. He was someone who took the time to interact with the environment. But the most significant find outside the house wasn't digital. It was a physical object found 2 miles away in a field, a single glove. Preliminary DNA testing suggests it matches the gloves worn by the masked suspect in the video. If the FBI can pull a touch DNA profile from the inside of that glove, the mystery of who was under that mask might finally be solved. We are standing on the edge of a forensic breakthrough, but for Savannah and her family, every second the FBI spends in the lab is another second Nancy is away from home. To understand the gravity of what the Guthrie family is enduring, you have to look at the timeline of that final night. On Saturday, January 31st, Nancy was living a normal, beautiful life. She took an Uber to her daughter Annie's house for dinner and games. Her son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni, dropped her back at her home at 9:48 p.m. By 9:50 p.m., her garage door was closed and she was safely inside. But less than 4 hours later, the nightmare began. At 1:47 a.m., the doorbell camera was disconnected by a masked, gloved individual. At 2:12 a.m., motion was detected inside the home. And then, at 2:28 a.m., a piece of technology Nancy wore for her survival gave the most chilling signal of all. Her pacemaker app indicated the device had been disconnected from her phone. Think about that moment. 2:28 a.m. That is likely the exact moment Nancy Guthrie was moved out of range of her home network. The moment she was taken into the darkness of the Arizona desert. She didn't have her phone. She didn't have her glasses. She was an 84-year-old woman being hurried into a vehicle while her heart was monitored by a device that was now screaming into a digital void. The fact that her cell phone, her wallet, and even her own car were left behind proves this wasn't a robbery. The perpetrators didn't want her things. They wanted her, and they knew exactly when to strike. This wasn't a random house they picked at 2 o'clock in the morning. They knew Nancy lived alone. They knew she was vulnerable, and they knew that by dawn the woman the world knows as Savannah Guthrie's mother would be gone. Tonight, the question on every American's mind is the same. Where is Nancy? The search has expanded into Rio Rico and across the border, with federal agents following every ping from cell towers in the area. But as the days turn to weeks, the kidnapping for ransom theory is being challenged by darker possibilities. Criminologists like Ann Burgess, the inspiration for the Mindhunter series, have pointed out that a professional kidnapper usually has a proof of life ready to go. The fact that we haven't seen one and that the ransom deadlines have passed without further contact suggests this may have been revenge or something even more personal. Some have even floated the theory of a celebrity stalker who staged the kidnapping just to get Savannah's attention, a terrifying thought that adds a layer of predatory obsession to an already horrific crime. But through the pain and the theories, Savannah Guthrie remains the heart of this search. She has stepped away from her dream job, including the 2026 Winter Olympics, because nothing matters more than this. She is a daughter fighting for her mother's life in front of the entire world. And she is asking for one thing, for someone to do the right thing. If you are watching this and you live in the Southwest, if you saw a black Ozark Trail backpack or a masked man carrying a bouquet of weeds, or if you know someone who has suddenly become flush with cash or started acting erratic, now is the time. There is a $1.2 million reward on the table. You can stay anonymous. You can save a life. We will not stop covering this until Nancy Guthrie is home. We will continue to turn over every stone, analyze every frame of video, and keep her name in the headlines. Because in America, we don't leave our mothers behind. Savannah, Annie, Cameron, our hearts are with you. I am Michelle. This is the Michell Report. Thank you for watching.